Hi, my name is Fallout, and I'm going to be dishing out the easiest damage you've ever seen during this entire introduction. If you're a new Monster Hunter player with veteran friends and you want an easy-to-learn weapon that will let you hang at their level, I regretfully yet strongly recommend the Longsword. This damage combo I've been doing the entire time in the background has been performed by me just hitting 2 buttons back and forth. If that sounds right up your alley, then let's get into it. So, other than that stuff I just said, why use the Longsword in Monster Hunter Wilds? Welcome back, my friends. Today I've got another straightforward weapon tutorial for you, and we're covering a weapon I'm almost ashamed to admit I enjoy, the Longsword. We'll be covering all the following topics today: why players might consider using the Longsword, the basics of how the Longsword works, all moves and combos, and finally your TLDR basic combat loop. Alright, why should you consider using the Longsword? Not to upset any Longsword mains out there who might be poking their head in to see if I'm teaching how to use their beloved baby correctly, but I'm just gonna say this. Whereas the Charge Blade and the Switch Axe offer high damage output at the cost of having to learn fairly tricky mechanics, the Longsword also has quality damage output with a much more beginner-friendly learning curve, I'll say. And look, I'll give credit where credit is due. Even though I feel the Longsword is easy to learn, it definitely will take you time to master. The Longsword does offer awesome and very flashy counter attacks for those who desperately want to parry and style on monsters during a fight. But take note though, you do not need these counters and parries to succeed with the Longsword right away. And by that I mean, don't think to yourself, oh man, parrying is hard, I shouldn't even try to use the Longsword. Even without parrying or countering at all, with just a basic understanding of how to use the Longsword, you can go into an average hunt and totally dumpster the monster with high damage output that is very easy to perform. Also, because the Longsword is, long, you can dish out damage from slightly further away than some other melee options I could mention, which is a nice little cherry on top. Like my hammer tutorial, link below if you want to check that out, I'll be using the button inputs for the PlayStation controller, but I'll try to refer to the attacks by name so you can follow along regardless of how you play. But yeah, before getting into every attack and combo, why don't we go over the basics of how to use the Longsword. And the very first thing we should cover is up there in the top left corner, the Spirit Gauge. Level 0 is what we're at right now, a completely empty gauge. Level 1 looks like this, a white glow on the outside of the gauge. Don't look at the inside of the gauge for right now, only the color on the outside. Level 2 looks like this, a golden glow on the outside of the gauge. And level 3 looks like this, a bright red glow on the outside of the gauge. As you probably guessed, your goal when using the Longsword is to get your gauge up to level 3 as often as you can. And the reason why is that when you're at level 3, you deal more damage with the Longsword. When you're at level 0, you'll do normal damage. When you're at level 1, you'll do 1.02 times more damage. When you're at level 2, you'll do 1.04 times more damage, and when you're at level 3, aka when the gauge is glowing red, you'll deal 1.1 times more damage, which is great. So here's how to get from level 0 to level 3. As I damage the training barrel with my basic triangle attack, look at the center of the Spirit Gauge. You'll see that there's a bar slowly creeping up after each hit. However, when the gauge eventually becomes full, even if I keep landing hits, we still haven't powered up to level 1. That's because there's a certain combo you have to perform in order to officially advance your gauge up to the next level. That would be the Spirit Blade combo, and you do it by pressing R2 4 times. Take note that as I land each hit in the Spirit Blade combo, the meter in the center of the Spirit Gauge goes down. We're essentially spending Spirit Gauge in order to perform the combo. On the 4th and final hit of the R2 combo, you'll perform a Spirit Round Slash, and if you connect with that attack, take a look. Our Spirit Gauge has now officially jumped up to level 1, aka it has a white glow around the outside now. And now you can rinse and repeat. Land basic attacks on your target to build up the center of the meter, and when we have enough energy, again, doesn't have to be completely 100% full, we can do our Spirit combo by hitting R2 4 times and upgrade to Spirit Gauge level 2. Then do the whole thing one more time to upgrade to level 3. You've now learned the most important part of using the Longsword, which is simply simply how to build up to spirit gauge level 3. Take note, there's another method of leveling up your gauges which you may find easier. By pressing and holding R2, you'll perform a spirit charge, which involves you slowly doing some kind of badass ninja pose. Eventually, your hunter will flash, indicating the spirit charge is ready, and you can release R2, which will unleash a spirit round slash. Landing the spirit round slash will automatically level up your spirit gauge on contact, meaning you can, in theory, go all the way up to level 3 without having to build up the center meter first. This can be tricky to do in combat because waiting through the spirit charge pose animation takes a second or two, and the monster might be hard to hit if it's jumping around or beating your butt while you're trying to charge up. If the monster is focused on someone else though, or incapacitated, or you're just really good at movement, leveling up your gauge via the spirit charge method is highly recommended because it's easy and fast. And side note, get into the habit of throwing out any other attack after successfully landing your spirit charge. Reason being, if you do just the spirit charge and don't do any other attack, your hunter tries to look all cool and anime and puts their sword away like the fight is over. But if you throw out another basic attack after landing the spirit charge, you keep your sword out, which is nice. When you're at spirit gauge level 3, you should notice that your basic triangle attack, normally called an overhead slash, is now called a crimson slash 1. Not hugely important, but just in case you were confused about that. Also take note that no matter what level spirit gauge you're currently at, both the inner and outer meter will slowly deplete over time. Therefore, when you hit level 3, try to get in as much damage as you can before the meter runs out and you downgrade back to level 2. But before we get any further, today's video is sponsored by Doomsday Last Survivors, so let's thank them real quick. Doomsday Last Survivors is a zombie survival game set in the near future where zombies have destroyed the entire world. Oh hey, did I mention there's a $300 starter pack for all new players who download the game? You can also play this game on multiple platforms, including Android, iOS, and PC. Gotta tell ya, I always appreciate it when I have options. To survive, you gotta reinforce your shelter and recruit the strongest heroes, train them to lead your squad, and gather resources. Search an unknown battlefield for useful equipment and supplies within shrinking livable areas, build your own army, and pit it against other players. Choose powerful heroes to join your adventures and try to survive the zombie waves. The more zombie waves you survive through, the better you are than other regular people. You can't dispute that, it's just science. Or you could check out multiplier gate mode. In a multiplier gate combat, players have to adjust on the fly in real time based on battlefield situations, enemy characteristics, and the cooldown time of their hero's skills. That means every battle is full of unknown variables and surprises, kind of like walking into a Walmart on a Tuesday. Rich hero rewards, wild zombie wave challenges, and more are all waiting for you. Also, be sure to join an alliance and work with your allies to protect the water source, explore the world, and of course, kill zombies. Don't wait, check out my link in the pinned comment and try out Doomsday Last Survivors today. And remember, log in for 14 consecutive days for a chance to win an iPhone 16 Pro Max. Okay, now that you understand how the spirit gauge works, why don't we go into all the other attacks and combos you might want to know about. By pressing triangle 3 times, you can perform an overhead slash into an overhead slash into a crescent slash combo. By pressing circle twice, you'll first perform a thrust and then a rising slash, which you can repeat forever if you wish. By pressing triangle and circle, you can perform a fade slash, which involves you doing damage and then leaping back, kind of a nice repositioning tool. By hitting the joystick in any direction while performing the fade slash, you perform a lateral slash and leap in that direction. Again, kind of a nice repositioning tool. If you want, after a fade slash, you can hit triangle and circle again to perform a thrust. Not bad if you want to hop back and then open up into a basic combo. By hitting triangle and R2 together, you perform a spirit thrust, which involves you charging sword first into the target. You might notice that at spirit gauge level 0, nothing happens after the spirit thrust. If you have any spirit gauge above level 0 though, then after landing a spirit thrust, you'll leap into the air and dive back down, performing a spirit helmbreaker, dealing extra damage when you land. If you perform a spirit thrust at level 3, then land with a helmbreaker, you'll be able to press R2 again after you land and perform a spirit release slash, where you'll do a super anime looking move spinning around and dealing a ton of extra damage. Take note that after you perform a spirit thrust into a Helmbreaker, you'll automatically lose 1 level of spirit gauge no matter where you were in the meter. You should also take note that if you do a Helmbreaker at level 3 and then follow up with a spirit release slash, you'll lose 2 gauges when it's all said and done. However, even though you lose 2 spirit gauges doing that attack the whole way through, it is very worth it considering the damage you put out during that whole ordeal, so don't be afraid to use it. The go-to move for a lot of longsword hunters is to dish out a bunch of damage while they're at level 3, and then when the spirit gauge is looking near empty, they'll do a spirit thrust into a Helmbreaker into a spirit release slash. Again, it'll take you down 2 levels, but hey, your meter was low and you were gonna downgrade anyway, so why not get max damage on the way out? Besides, you can build back up to spirit gauge level 3 in no time. Take note that if a monster is moving away from you mid Helmbreaker, you can actually cancel the attack in the air by hitting R1. Alright, let's talk counters real quick. Counter option number 1 is a little bit easier to execute, but unfortunately you can't do it when standing still. You have to already be in the middle of a combo or another attack in order to do it. While in a combo, if you hit R2 and circle together, you'll perform a foresight slash where you hop back, then do a great big swing forward. The ideal situation to use foresight slash is if you're in the middle of a combo and notice that the monster is winding up to strike you. Hit your foresight slash to counter the monster and damage it while avoiding getting knocked into next week all in one go. Take note that even if you don't counter an attack with foresight slash, you can still land the hit and do damage. It's just slow and not optimal, and you'll look weird doing it. The other counter has much stricter timing to execute and is called an EI Spirit Slash. Again, you cannot do this while standing around doing nothing. You have to be in the middle of a combo already to pull it off. So while in a combo, if you hit R2 and X together, you'll perform what is called a special sheath, where you step back and slowly sheathe your sword. From there, pressing R2 again will execute the EI Spirit Slash, where you'll dash forward in a dramatically weeby manner with damage soon to follow. If you execute the EI Spirit Slash as a monster is just about to attack you, you'll pull off an extremely badass looking counter. But again though, the timing on this is really strict. If you are just starting out on the longsword, do not expect to nail the timing on this mechanic right away. It's gonna take practice, so only practice that move when you feel like you're comfortable with the longsword and get ready to fail a whole bunch before finally nailing it. You'll notice that during your special sheath move, you can instead press triangle to perform an EI slash. Landing a regular EI slash on a target will slowly build up spirit gauge over time. So if you want, it's kind of a nice way to build up gauge for free. Alrighty, it is now time to go over our TLDR longsword combat loop. Obviously, our priority is to get to spirit gauge level 3 right away. Easy way number 1 is to hit triangle 3 times to perform an overhead slash to crescent slash combo to build up the gauge. Rinse and repeat until that inner meter is around 75-ish% full, and then hit your Spirit Blade combo, i.e. hit R2 4 times in a row, being extra sure to land the 4th and final hit to up your spirit gauge level by 1. Rinse and repeat until you're at spirit gauge level 3. Easy way number 2 is to get close to the monster, then hold R2 to perform your spirit charge, which remember will let you go up 1 gauge right away if you finish the charge up animation and land the attack. Rinse and repeat until you're at level 3. When you're at level 3, it's time to dish out big damage, and you have a few options. You can hit triangle 3 times to perform a Crimson 1, Crimson 2, and Crimson 3 combo. Rinse and repeat if you wish. Or you can hit R2 5 times to go from a Spirit Blade 1 all the way to a spinning Crimson slash attack. Rinse and repeat. However, a lot of longsword players I've been talking to enjoy the following. Hit triangle and then R2, and that's it. Just hit those 2 buttons back and forth forever, alternating between a Crimson 1 and a Spirit Blade 1 attack. Because you never fully lock in a combo to completion, you never have to deal with a long cooldown animation at the end of a combo and can just do this back and forth forever, which I recommend. Alright, Ultra TLDR. Build your gauge to level 3, then triangle and R2, i.e. Crimson 1 and Spirit Blade 1 back and forth forever, or until your meter is low, and then because you're gonna go down to level 2 anyway, finish things off with a Spirit Thrust into a Helmbreaker into a Spirit Release slash. Rinse and repeat. Congratulations new players, you can now go out on hunts with your veteran veteran friends and keep up in the damage department. Once you get more confident, try practicing a few counters and have fun with it. Other longsword users out there, please feel free to leave additional tips and recommendations down in the comment section and let me know what weapon you want me to cover next. Thanks very much for watching. Peace!